যদি সবাই ফিরে যায়, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা সবাই ফিরে যায়, যদি গহন পথে যাওয়ার কালে কেউ ফিরে না যায়, তবে পথের কাটা তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, তুই রক্ত মাখা চরণ তলে একলা দলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে, তবে একলা চলো রে। যদি আলো না ধরে, ওরে ওরে ও ভাগা আলো না ধরে, যদি ঝড় বাদলে আধার রাতে দুয়ার দেয় ঘরে, তবে বজ্রানলে আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা জলরে, আপন বুকের পাঁজর জ্বালিয়ে নিয়ে একলা জলরে, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কেউ না আসে, তবে একলা চলো রে। একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো, একলা চলো রে।
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. After a long time, we have back with us Mr. AcademicMan, our new friend. So, who is great at stuff like social sciences. He has a lot of knowledge on everything related to caste and historical sociology, comparative sociology. So we are going to discuss with him, how did one cool country called Japan solved its casteism issues? Because you know castes exist everywhere. How it solved it without reservations, and then went on to become a really great, cool fucking country that everybody admires. Every leftist, every right-winger in every country admires this particular country. Can you believe what an achievement that is? So before we get to his words, first of all, thank you for coming back on our podcast.
This is the first time I'm here.
Okay, your voice is not really working properly.
Yeah. I got it.
It sounds more like a Bengali academic man.
Anyway, let's continue. Yeah.
What are castes? Castes are exclusive status groups based on your status, which are exclusive, which means it's distinct from other people's groups who are not kind of allowed in your group. You like to have your own little cool club. Okay, you have to mute yourself, otherwise it keeps echoing. Yeah, it's better now. So that's sort of a club where you have your own distinct practices, your own consumption patterns. You consume things, food, entertainment, literature, knowledge, everything, and you do it in a certain way, in a certain medium, in particular ways. Some people watch cricket standing outside the TV shop, electronics store. Some people watch it on a 27-inch flat screen in their homes, in their smart TVs. And this man's internet has committed suicide. So these are exclusive groups, and everybody has a certain status in society. That is what happens in advanced, complex civilizations and societies, which are not primitive, which don't just bother about surviving. Okay? Yeah, kill that goddamn elephant so that we can have some meat, just so we can survive. Oh my God, tomorrow we have to hunt another something. Oh, that tiger is coming to eat me. That kind of a life. When you move on from that kind of a life, have nice things beyond your survival, at that point, you get into something called signaling and doing an action called mimesis. That's when you desire an object, not directly, but in order to project and let people know what it says about you for having desired that object. This is how statuses are formed. It often happens based on what your family background is, what your wealth is, in what profession you are, how that's looked upon in society, how and how high is the barrier to entry in that profession. That's pretty much how your importance in society grows.
Yeah.
In such a context, these phenomena seem to have occurred everywhere in the world, and so it did in Japan. How right or accurate am I, academic man? And then tell us the story of Japan.
Yes. So Japan is a perfect example of how, you do proper soft power exercises, and you can basically fool the entire world about how great you are. And you said it already. In a sense, its status closure is based on occupational, access to resources, education, exclusive groups, etc. So in that sense, you got that right. Now, in Japan, the special case was that the interesting similarity that they had with us is that typically there is an order of four people, and it was officially kind of consecrated by the state, allowed by the state rather. And then what happened is that there was also categories that were discriminated against, castes or occupations that were discriminated against, and that continued well into the 20th century. Okay, what is that? Oh, so anyway, having said
An
that,
amazing, an amazing Bengali fictional thriller. By the way, I'll have to tell about this book to you. I completely forgot. It's a
ah,
The premise is Prokhor Rudra has now grown up to be an old man, and we are following his life, written by a contemporary Bengali fiction author.
nice. Having So there's a comment that leftists will say Japan destroyed caste by doing land reforms. Kind of. Actually, that's you're not off there. You're not wrong there. France as well. When France, you see, what sustains caste is private property, but uh, in that, I mean, the problem with that is that it depends on whether you see caste as inevitable or not. So if you don't allow private property, what that does is it creates a different kind of more more what can I say, static form of caste, like you would see in USSR, or the former USSR, or even Japan, where the samurai artificially sustained a caste structure. Whereas in India or in England, where private property rights were better, the state was less centralized. There, what happened is that castes were created, but there was upward mobility. So if somebody managed to acquire land and resources or power, which was fairly common earlier, then what would happen is they could change their caste, which was prevented in Japan and USSR, and other kind of socialist states. So caste is inevitable. Land reform can reduce one form of caste, but it cannot destroy caste entirely,
Why
because
didn't
caste exist.
I have to
Yeah.
interrupt you here? Why didn't Bengal's land reforms by CPIM not solve casteism, or let's say caste as it is understood to be lack of representation in certain professions? Why didn't that kind of casteism go away in Bengal? Because if you talk about
So,
representation, if you ask any non-Bengali in the world to name some Bengalis they have heard of, they will pretty much name people just from three jatis: Brahmins,
yeah,
Vaidyas, and Kayasthas, except
yeah.
Meghnad Shah and Ridhiman Shah in the current days.
Uh, See, the Communist Party did not, I mean, sorry to sound like a communist, but they didn't enact those land reforms properly. They did not do it outright like Japan did,
So
wherein
real land reforms haven't been tried yet.
we tried it. Number one. Number two is the bigger issue at stake here is because there was no economic growth, which was also an artificial creation by the communists, that disallowed. So even if you gave land to farmers, uh, oh, nice. So even if you gave land to farmers, you didn't allow them to profit because there was no market access for farmers, which is still the case, by the way, in most of India, which is why the farm laws were a very good thing. But eventually what happened is the farm law, Modi ji decided to withdraw it for whatever reasons. But the farm laws were precisely required for this, that access to agrarian produce would be allowed by private players. But that again CPIM did not allow. So even if they gave the peasants land, it wasn't enough. And secondly, they did not really give everyone land. So they didn't do the land reforms in Muslim areas. They did not do land reforms properly in many areas. Like some upper castes who were communist cadres, their lands were intact. That kind of thing they did. So the Jotdar class that they so-called wanted to weed out, that Jotdar class just got replaced by middle classes, professional classes, who again were recruited as teachers and professors by the state. So that just entrenched the three castes in the service. So since there was no capitalism for the poorer people to fall back on, the only resource they were left is what was with land, and that to very small parcels of land where the produce could not be sold to capitalists, so they could not benefit. The prices of these foodstuffs were regulated. Agricultural produce was highly regulated, and because of the lack of access to kind of markets, proper markets, and technology, their produces weren't be selling enough, if I can say that, or at a
But
better price.
did the landowners lose their land or not?
Some landowners did, some congressy people did, but it was very politically targeted kind of. It wasn't a all out system. In that, that's the whole reason that this was not a very successful thing. Unlike Tokugawa Japan, where the reforms were pretty much centralized, like it was done more or less throughout Japan in a very centralized manner. Here the land reforms weren't done properly, so called.
Academic man, why do we repeatedly see that India gets worst of all worlds? We do not get the benefits of centralization, nor do we get the benefits of complete federalism. This quasi-federalism is killing us.
No, that's because for some weird reason nobody does it. Everyone does everything half-heartedly. I don't know. That's probably a structural issue. That's probably also because that it's you see, you have to understand one thing. In France, when the centralization happened under the monarchs, okay, it was because France fought a lot of wars with England and other parts of Europe, but particularly England. So the monarch needed more revenue, and so he developed an apparatus, a parallel apparatus to centralize and collect more revenues. That screwed over the landowning gentry and the nobility. So that was France's story. In Bengal or India, if I say, there was not a very large centralized army for a very long time. Even the Mughal state basically depended on seasonal, the peasants were basically seasonal army men. So it wasn't a very, what can I say, there wasn't a centralized standing army. In fact, even Japan had basically a centralized standing army. The samurai were that centralized standing army. So if you think about it, because to maintain a standing army, you need to centralize the state. And because India never really had a standing army before the British, we never really centralized when it was lucrative for us. Now, going back to England developed a more private version of the army, or in US we see militia, because England and USA weren't really centralized. But the thing is, in England and USA, you have very good private property laws, so your laws were protected, and that also created a kind of the decentralization benefited a lot of people. But here the problem was that the state was heavily extractive. The state extracted a lot of revenue, and also it did not do a lot with that revenue. So it extracted the revenue, but it went all to the middlemen. It did not go to the army. So we failed decentralization and we failed centralization on both counts. But the structural similarity with England remained. Basically, because of decentralization, it was it was, I mean, lack of conviction is one way of putting it, but it doesn't justify what happened. Basically, you need a standing army when you are constantly at war, right? But we were already broken up into different zamindaris and all that, so we didn't really fight with each other as much. Or
So
you know,
when
the
you have
king,
a standing army, doesn't that automatically mean that birth-based profession going will be inevitable? A steady
going as
supply
in,
of soldiers over generations, then guaranteed supply.
guaranteed supply. Yes, that's how the samurai became a standing army and then became a caste, because they were the standing army, and then they decided that why we will run, if we have the weapons, then why don't we run the thing? So they ran Japan for 250 years and even before that. So basically the samurai were that caste that was produced, and samurai positions were hereditary. You like just some dude who you couldn't become a samurai out of nowhere. So it was very much a hereditary enterprise in that sense. So that, yes, so that worked. But like I said, like that, because they were divorced from land, unlike the British gentry or the Indian gentry classes, they retained their they were unable to retain their privileges in society. That's
Uh,
one big
what
factor
percentage
actually.
of now?
Japan.
Yeah, he's bothered about Bengal right now. So just answer him and move on. What percentage of the landowners lost their land? As far as he knows, in Maharashtra, the number was 11%.
I honestly don't know, because Bengal is this part. The modern Bengal is not like postmodern Bengal, if I can call it that, or post 60s Bengal is not really my area of expertise. Okay.
Okay.
There are other people who are better at that. But yes, a large number of people did lose. I mean, I know I'm still more better at it than many others. So on that topic. So according to the works of Adel Engelsen Rood and all, you can search up his papers online. Adel Engelsen Rood gives you the basic picture of how the land reforms happened, how the Communist Party, took over power through these so-called quote-unquote organic movements against Jotdars. Jotdars were the middle castes who held land. Middle castes, or sometimes Brahman Buddhi caste, but majorly it was the middle castes and some upper castes. But again, a lot of them cracked deals with the left and saved their lands. So exactly.
Academic man, this is a great question. That is just then. Did Japan solve casteism just because of quote unquote proper land reforms, and did India fail because of the improper land reforms?
See, uh, land reforms changed the nature of caste. That's what I'm going on saying, that Japan did land reforms properly in the early modern period, like the Tokugawa era, 1600s to 1850s. But that destroyed the samurai in the long run. The samurai who did it got screwed in the long run because they lost land. But the problem is that did not really destroy caste. So that the casteism against the Eta and Hinin, these two castes, that got transferred into race. So the Burakomin, which evolved later, they were seen as being racially inferior to the Japanese. So that did not disappear. That never really, went away, so called. If I can put it in those words, casteism just changed its form. It became racial, and then the Koreans, Zainichi, the Ainu, Japan has all these little small communities that are heavily discriminated against by the more mainstream Japanese, or were discriminated against. So that persisted for a
So
very
then,
long
do
time.
we or do we not need reservations to solve our casteism?
I can tell you what Japan did, and basically we can get some clues from that. So Japan, first there were these movements. One movement was called the Sui Heisha, which means water leveling. Right? Sui means water, Hei means level, and Sha means collective. So they wanted to be at water level or the level of commoners. So that evolved in 1922. And what happened is that this Suihesha movement eventually became the Buraku Liberation League later on. It evolved into it. So the Burakumin basically had three or four kinds of professions. So one was the people who worked with leather or people who were butchers, etc. The others were who were dealing with death, who were collecting dead bodies, etc. The others were beggars and prostitutes and former prostitutes, etc. And they were like even doing very menial tasks, cleaning roads and stuff. Though they were, those people were not so discriminated against. And the other were basically, some of them became criminals. So the Tokyo underworld was heavily full of Burakumin, who were the outcasts of Japan. And there in Japan, getting tattoos is a taboo. But you will notice that Yakuza leaders, they are full of tattoos. Their whole bodies are often full of tattoos. So that's a way of them defiling the Japanese society, etc. So they kind of bought that on themselves. So these are the major occupations that you would find them in the modern era. Now, what happened is in 1962, the Japanese government then realized that, okay, these people are ruining our image. That's what their reasoning was, basically. So we are going to become an evolved nation. World War II is over. We're screwed. But we can, we have cheap labor. We can manufacture well, and we have discipline, etc. But then there are people who are undesirables. They are not really, they're very poor and stuff. So you would find some Akira Kurosawa movies on that as well. So that these groups, then the government decide, okay, you know what, we'll reform these guys. What will we do? So they decided, firstly to not name them, like castes were not named in Japan. Number one, by the government. Number two is they decide to build schools and colleges in
That is exactly what Savarkar said. That is exactly what Savarkar had asked to do.
Yes. So Japan was Hindu Mahasabha Pro Max. Anyway, Rajbihari Bose was there. So anyway, of the Hindu Mahasabha, president of Japan. Anyway, so what they did was they were called the DOA policies, DOWA, DOA policies. So they opened a bunch of schools and colleges, cheap schools and colleges in these districts, and then they said, "Bhai, padhai karo, bade aadmi bano, IAS, YAS bano." Bas, that's it. That's what they did. They ran this program for 40 years, and then they shut it down. That's it. That's what Japan did. And Burakumin discrimination rates have gone down quite a bit ever since then. That's it.
As a comparative sociologist,
directed by Robert E. Weeder. Anyway, so that's
yeah. Then what is India getting wrong? Because one of the strongest arguments from the other side is that since casteism has not gone away in villages, etc., or somewhere or the other, and they then start stretching the definition as well, that matrimonial sites have caste preferences, therefore the society is casteist, etc. Why isn't that going away?
Because it will never go away. That's the whole, that's what you keep saying and I keep saying, and we have to.
So shouldn't we even aim for it?
Why should we aim for it? We did aim for it. That did not yield any, results per se. Now, if you want to do what Japan did, then yeah, you're welcome. You can ask the ऐसे भी CSR के नाम पे बहुत, God knows what happens. So you can ask the Tatas and Ambanis, instead of funding Naxals in TIS, you can ask them to open good schools and colleges in the tribal and Dalit areas and reform, improve their lives, build better roads and stuff, give electricity. Wo kar do bas. I mean, if you want to do what Japan did, then that's the way to go about it, instead of funding Naxals in TIS.
No, are you saying the government must give a directive to TIS to do these things, to fund these things?
Again, even the government's resources would be better spent that way. Better spent building infrastructure and schools and although you and I both know what happened with government schools and colleges, so in West Bengal, so I think CSR for funds and that kind of thing would be more effective. If you can give ISKCON the duty of giving midday meals, then you can ask ISKCON or these kind of organizations to build schools there, and they could even get tax breaks and stuff like that if they do it. It would run better, that's for sure. But that's the only way you can reform it long term. See, it's not that inherently India is casteist. That's the whole problem. I was watching this American today insult India completely on a podcast. He apparently a guy couldn't enter a restaurant because of his caste. I don't know how the restaurant owners know his caste anyway. So, and he was like, the India so casteist is horrible. So I was like, bro, you guys didn't allow black people to enter half your places a few years ago. So that's different. The problem here being that this thing where, so we have lost on many sides. So first we accepted that caste hai. Okay, then we should have said, okay, caste is everywhere, big deal. Then we accepted that caste has something to do with religion, and then we tried to prove that Bhagavad Gita said caste has no religion. So that whole thing again screwed us in the backside, because when you admit that your religion allows casteism, then you basically admit that your whole worldview is problematic. Your entire culture and worldview is problematic. So again, we should have pointed fingers at the West and Japan and all these places and shown that by what's so unique about India. They're discriminating in these countries as well. And
Yeah,
then,
India was kind of kneecapped in the very beginning. They were so late to the party. They lost the game before they realized the game had started. It was the terminologies used for the Indian situation were made to be distinct, and everybody just went with it and admitted
the
that
left,
yes, we
we
do
should
see the
learn from
problem.
the left. The left, you ask them anything that's wrong, like you ask them if somebody killed somebody in Modijhapi or something, and then they'll say, oh, but in Gujarat so many people died. So it's they do that all the time, and it's a very effective strategy. It shifts the goalpost entirely, and that helps in the long run if you think about it. Yes, can't we call Chebol families? Yes, absolutely. Chebol families have a very high intermarriage rate. Around 50% of Chebol families marry with each other. So what do you call that except caste? I mean,
Great. Then, academic man, that brings us to the pedagogy surrounding caste, the syllabus, the professors, what are the leanings, etc. What's been the research like on caste in India? What kind of job have Irfan Habib and Romila Thapar done?
I mean, on your channel itself, we heard a lot of how, what Irfan Habib said. He traced the ideology, so quote unquote ideology of caste back to Buddhism. And then he said, when Brahmins weren't allowed, Brahmins just didn't wake up one fine morning and decide to discriminate against everyone.
And that
So
Rigveda did not have casteism.
Rigved did not have casteism, and that nobody really, Islamic rulers or Christian rulers, nobody really reformed caste. In fact, they made it worse, if anything. So, having said all
If
that,
not anything else, they used it to their advantage.
yes, in fact, they made it worse in some ways. So, not Islamic rulers necessarily completely, but if you look at the Christians, I mean, the British colonizers, I mean, Dirks's book tells us how they reified caste, and they made a whole different thing about caste, basically. And this was a very different attitude. Like, if you read Dirks in detail, you will see that when Portuguese and others came in the 17th century and all, they saw the people of India. They were like, yeah, big deal. I mean, it's a nice country. Nobody really mentions caste as something weird or unique when they came in the 1600s and 1700s. So, if the Europeans were coming to our country,
Acha,
and
didn't
they were
Megasthenes talk about castes? Brahmins
no,
and stuff.
professions and ranks, but that's it. The ranks to har jagah the bhai. Are you telling me that ancient Greece did not have ranks? Ancient Greece did not have a nobility. Europe did not have a nobility. So the Portuguese came, and Portuguese and others came, French and all these people came, and they were like, uh, how, I mean, how is this different? Okay, but yeah, obviously India was different, and everyone wanted to rule it because it was a good place to rule. Now, having said that, there was one dude called Roberto de Nobili, who was a Jesuit priest. And Roberto de Nobili actually realized what caste was. So he tried to convert people. So he said, "Ki bhai, if you give Brahmins the thing that you can wear your Janeyu after you become Anthony Chatterjee, then Anthony Chatterjee won't have a problem with it, because Anthony Chatterjee wants higher status. That has nothing to do with his religious beliefs. He can do Yesudi Balle Balle and wear the Janeyu. That's what that's what Roberto de Nobili, realized. And then they realized that, see, Brahmin, so he was kind of a minority view among the Jesuits. So that's the other problem. Like the Jesuits, they realized that, okay, so the Brahmins are the bigger issue here. So instead of co-opting Brahmins, so Nobili's idea was Brahman ko gali mat do, Brahman ko co-opt kar lo. So if you convert Brahmins, looking at the Brahmins and others, people would convert. I would say that was a more genius strategy.
Something similar happened in West Bengal.
Yes, the commies finally did it. Now, what happened is that the people against Nobili, because Nobili faced a lot of criticism from the church itself, they were like, bro, I mean, how can we allow this Janeyu and all that stuff and still allow them to call themselves Christian? So this led to a lot of debate and stuff, and then they realized, okay, bhai, then we have to do one thing, we have to abuse Brahmins day in, day out. Because unless Brahmins convert, you don't really have mass conversion in society. And that's one reason that, again, interestingly, look at the Japanese parallel. So when the Portuguese were in Japan, so the Tokugawa shogunate was ruling in the 1600s. The Japanese, they burnt the Christians alive in the 1600s after the Tokugawa shogunate came to power, because the Tokugawa shogunate saw Christianity for what it was. It was a foreign ideology. So they took all converts, and especially the samurai, who were called veteran, who were converted, and they especially treated them like, they did all kinds of tortures on them, which if I tell you, maybe your channel will be banned. Okay, so you can watch this movie by Scorsese, which is a pro-Christian film, but it depicts those tortures. It's called Silence. It's by Martin Scorsese. It's on Japan.
Andrew Garfield.
Yes, Andrew Garfield and that Adam Driver and Liam Neeson. Yeah, it's a pretty good, well-made movie, and it has the debates. Like, so there are theological debates in the movie. So they're like, bro, you pray to the sun, and there are, bro, you pray to a dude. Big deal. So that kind of thing. Okay, and the nature of God and stuff, all this stuff. So, but the Tokugawa shogunate, when it came to power in the 1600s, it realized, bhai, if we allow Christians to enter, if we allow Europeans to enter, firstly they'll screw us over. So they did the policy of Sakoku, where they prevented any foreigners from coming into Japan for the next 250 years. So they were like, MAGA's wet dream. What they did was, like, MAGA people would go crazy if they heard that. Okay, so anyway, that, and then what they did was, whoever was a Christian, they called them Korobi Christians or fallen Christians. And what they did was, they used to have these ceremonies where they would take the Christian idols and whatever they had, because remember, this is Catholic. Protestantism is like really far off even now. So they had these Mother Mary statues, Jesus crosses and all that. So they used to make them, stamp them in public, stamp them and spit on them in public. So this was done annually, and the records of whoever converted was kept by the government in a very strict manner to prevent reconversion or lapses, etc. So again, Japan protected its own culture in that way. Now, anyway, we have shifted the topic, and again, that was another source of casteism, by the way, because a lot of them were relegated to untouchability, kind of untouchability. Exactly, matlab, they were relegated to lower caste. They were relegated to hinin status as punishment. Ki bhai, you are a Christian, so screw you, basically. Okay,
Yeah,
that's policy.
yeah. So that's pretty much what happened in Japan. So let's get into the reservation debate then.
Yeah. So we had some questions in the middle. You could remind me what those were, maybe.
Yeah, this one was a cool one.
Is this a discussion on the existence of caste or caste-based discrimination? Discrimination is a universal phenomenon. You will find discrimination in every human society in the world, even animal society, if I can call it that. No, Meiji did not really solve caste. Meiji did not do a lot. See, it's what happens when how can I say this?
That's Japan Foundation propaganda.
Yes, because the emperor, when the emperor was restored, the emperor wanted to look good, right? I mean, anyone would. So just like Congresses keep saying Nehru built IIT, IIM, and all that stuff, and BJP says, but Modi ji built 2 times more IITs and IIMs. So Meiji restoration would not have been so successful if the Tokugawa era was not so successful. Okay, how was Tokugawa era successful? The Tokugawa era allowed for people to open businesses because they were very absent. The samurai were absent in the rural areas. So what happens is that the people called Gono, who were these farmers, rich farmers, they opened their own agrarian industries like silk and all that stuff. Okay, silk, cocoa, nuts, these, that, whatever. Not maybe cocoa, but other kinds of cash crops, etc., which created a very vibrant merchant community inside Japan. So the merchants became more powerful, and because the samurai got taxes based on rice, so they had to exchange that rice for money. So the merchants became rich off that as well. So having said that, basically what happened is the Tokugawa pseudo modernized. Like, there was, what the Tokugawa era did was proto-capitalism in Japan. They built roads because they had to travel. The samurai had to frequently travel to Tokyo, so they built roads, and they weren't present in the countryside to collect. মানে তোলাবাজি যেটাকে বলে, তোলাবাজি বন্ধ ছিল জাপানে, কারণ তোলাবাজরা সব শহরে থাকতো. They didn't go into the rural areas and steal money. Okay, so what that allowed was that they allowed the rich guys in the villages to own industries. Industry বলাটা ভুল হবে, like agrarian industries and stuff, like big plots and all kinds of products, clothes, and other kinds of cash crops, etc. So that's how Japan modernized very fast. So when the Meiji emperor came, he was like, bro, let's just get Europeans and let's get their knowledge and open ek ke baad ek industry kholo, railway kholo, ye sab kholo. And because Japan was so centralized, it took him a few years to do that.
So the past injustices against Christians did not matter at that point in society?
No. No. Not only did it not matter, I mean, the Japanese were very proud of their achievements, quote unquote. And with regards to the Dalit or untouchability or discrimination issue in Japan, discrimination very well continued into the 1980s and 90s. So it wasn't, people see, what happened is when European modernity was introduced in Japan, concepts of superior descent and stuff came around. Like, so if you're a mainstream Japanese or samurai or whatever, you are seen to be from a higher racial stock. Okay, not very different from how Europeans thought of themselves. So then they were like, bhai, ye log kaun hai? Ye log to garib hai. I mean, these people are useless, quote unquote. So who are they? So they're probably Koreans or whatever, and I mean, screw them. So that kind of thing.
Is this true, what Nina is saying?
Yeah, if they killed everyone, then they wouldn't have done what they did later. But yes, I think again that is, I don't think that's entirely true. 95% would be a very arbitrary number. Trust me, I mean it was pretty bad, and it's how they dealt with it. They saw it as a foreign force that they have to deal with, and Christianity was wiped out. I mean, you have to understand that it was very popular to become Christian till the 1600s, and then after 1600s, within like a 30-40 years, Christianity was almost entirely wiped out in Japan. So yes, like I said, it's very difficult. I mean, we're suffering from Bhalokaku syndrome. Like Japanese can't be evil, Japanese can't be violent. But remember what they did in China and Second World War. That was pretty insane. Like,
2 Indian soldiers as well.
yeah, they were they were the OG, fascists, if I can call them that. And then
Abu Ghraib.
and not to mention that, how they became like anime kings, like how they now are known for the, imagine that, uh, let's say somebody like Vivek Agnihotri or somebody makes a movie, or some BJP guy does some soft power thing move or whatever, which BJP sucks at, by the way. And maybe Aditya Dhar, right? Or Kashmiri Pandits ke upar film bana and all. And people are like, these people are evil, they're Brahmins, they're the worst, etc. That kind of thing. But nobody says those things when they're watching an anime movie or a Akira Kurosawa movie. Like, they just conveniently forget how and they don't know. That's the weird thing. The myth of Japanese superiority was something that was created. So uh, the Chrysanthemum and the Sword, that was the book that created this kind of image, and people read it and they were like, oh, Japanese people are like the most perfect people. And you will notice that this propaganda continued even in Hollywood. So uh, if you look at The Last Samurai, if you watch that
Because
movie,
of papers published by the Japan Foundation.
yes,
Funded by
Japan
papers
Foundation.
funded by the
And
Japan Foundation.
see, after 1945, basically they were on the Allied side, right? They weren't with the Russians. So what happened is the Allies themselves, they created. So a lot of white people went to Japan and wrote awesome, like really awesome books about how awesome the Japanese are. Okay, with a few notable exceptions. So that's there. But if you watch a movie by Tom Cruise called The Last Samurai, where he there was a guy who's like there's a real life character it's based on, actually. So I forget his name, but there was a last samurai who opposed the Meiji government's drive for modernizing its army because it uh, destroyed the samurai. Okay, now that guy was not really this kind of heroic warrior. He died in a very horrible way and whatnot. But in the movie, they show him to be this really like awesome warrior who wants to face death in the face and stuff like that. Okay, so and Tom Cruise has these monologues like people are so perfect in Japan and this and that, and so such a peaceful, beautiful country, etc. So that myth of Japanese perfection and Japanese modernity and all, that was continued well into like 2000. Even now it continues, actually. If you ask any Indian what they think about Japan, they'll be like, oh, this greatest country in the world, right? So that's the thing.
Has the goal of reservation ever been reducing poverty?
It doesn't seem like that. See, Ambedkar himself knew the limitations of the reservation policy. So he said, let's keep it for 10 years. That's the part people know. What people also don't know is Ambedkar actually had proposed a land redistribution policy, which, interesting, this is not Marxist. Ambedkar said that there are lands in villages which are lying fallow and stuff. So you can give some of those lands to Dalits, but we will not do away with private property rights. We will do limited redistribution. You know why he did that? He knew that if the state can encroach on your private property lands, then it can do that to anyone, including his community. So he wanted private property rights to exist, but some land to be distributed to Dalits. That was his long-term plan for improvement of Dalits. His plan wasn't really ki reservation badhate jao, bada ke 50% ke upar kar do. That wasn't his plan. In fact, his plan was a limited 23 plus a bit of around 20 to 30% would be reserved, and then what would happen is, eventually that would create some upward mobility, and then you give some land and some opportunities to Dalits, and they would, their lives would improve. That was Ambedkar's actual policy, if you look at it, and that was heavily perverted by the Congress and the and VP Singh's government and all that, who basically used it as a freebie.
AcademicMan, why can't reservations give a one-time sort of a lump sum jump or push in somebody's lineage, and then by doing that for so many crores of families, haven't many people's status jump been fast-tracked, which would have happened maybe because of capitalism in a natural manner, maybe 1 or 2 generations later anyway?
Yeah, but then they're not giving those benefits up. So if the grandfather got reservations, even now the grandson is getting. So it creates a parallel system of state benefit. So it's the same as the earlier when the Raja Maharaja system, where if your grandfather was a Raja or Maharaja or a minister, then you would be a Raja, Maharaja minister, whatever. And it continues. So if you are going to make it successful, then creamy layer at least must be acknowledged and introduced. That if somebody's family got one job as a reserve in a reserve category, then that person has been uplifted. Even, I mean, you can do it with annual income and whatnot, although that's a joke. But anyway, you can do that, and then that would itself reform the system. If you want it, again, the problem is that you and I both know that reforms don't work. This kind of socialist kind of reforms don't really work. And there will always be loopholes and corruption, and some dude will fake some birth certificate or something and get away with it. But if there is no way out of it, at least reform it. That's my point. Because the same families cannot, like, they are enjoying the seats that would have helped another family, if I am to put it succinctly. But that's not happening.
I will get back to you. Rishabh is asking, is status in today's world a result of wealth or social status? If it's wealth, reservations have no point. It's not wealth. It will forever be social status, because that's what status is. Because
but
with
the
wealth,
baseline has
like,
always been wealth. Why? The baseline has always been
no,
wealth.
only in the starting point. It takes wealth takes time to become status. It doesn't immediately become status. So
And your status will go in 2-3 generations if you don't have wealth. Like,
yeah, and the same status doesn't work everywhere. So
exactly.
so when it doesn't work everywhere, where it doesn't work, it then again ends up being social status. Let's say even until our generation, now the world has become much more smaller. पृथ्वीটা ছোট হতে হতে তো even in our generation, if a Pandey surnamed rich farmer's son came to JU and hung out with his Brahmin buddies from Kolkata, he would be looked down upon or not be a part of that group for much long, because he would be listening to Bhojpuri music and have a horrible English accent, and his friends would be talking about Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad and listening to great heavy metal. That was not going to work. That's social status. Wealth does not matter here.
Exactly.
And he will be richer than all the Bengalis, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. So status is again contingent on a lot of factors, especially the spaces and the cultures. But having said that, this is exactly where the West Bengal case study is also interesting, that this Bhadralok caste status group, which evolved in the 19th century and then 20th century, which was, why did it become so powerful? Because all the top government posts and teachers and professors and actors and directors and musicians, everyone was from these 3 castes, right? But what happened is that now that, and I've mentioned this before, now that this there has been a difference in the status of people in West Bengal. So earlier your leaders were Buddhadev Bhattacharya and all these people. Now your leaders are Anubroto Mondol and all these kind of people. So what happens is the language of status has changed, which is why you will notice that teachers and professors no longer enjoy the kind of power that they used to enjoy even till maybe 2012 or 13. And the same goes for and their place has been taken over by kind of loud, rowdy kind of people, if I can use those terms. But that's because they have sustained the money, right? Your land and these kind of illegal businesses, that sustains your wealth and your show of wealth. But the teachers and professors have become impoverished because comparatively impoverished, and on top of that, corruption allegations have come against many people. So that both of these have destroyed the very kind of status that they used to enjoy. So that is
now
that.
Is caste
to be a gunda nowadays. So that's people aspire to be gundas. People used to aspire to be teachers.
Yes.
Now they aspire to be gundas. I don't
Yes.
say that in a bad way. I'm just saying that shows how money works. Money is very important as well. When it sustains.
You can also say it as a bad thing as well. And I'm sure not since 4th May. Is reservation morally an injustice or an unjust thing to do to society, or if the creamy layer happens, then the rest of the reservations are fine based on historical injustices which are not equivalently applied to all other kinds of groupings, let's say on religion or gender and stuff, or even species?
I don't see morality. I as a my personal conviction.
Yeah, so is reservation wrong or right in some way or the other?
I don't deal with wrong or right. I can tell you one thing, that it is more of the same. How is it more of the same? Like I said earlier, certain posts were reserved for certain castes, like Raja, Maharaja, Kshatriya, Brahman, all this stuff. And that is the case. That was the case in Japan, England, Europe, everywhere. So we just changed that logic. We were like, bro, theek hai. Matlab, those guys got it then. Now some other dudes will get it on hereditary basis. So the logic of reservation is not a what can I say? It's not a unique or something new. It continues the same form of hereditary job creation, if I can call it that. Okay. Now, having said that, that means that you see, it will never reform the caste system. It cannot, because it operates on the same logic that the so-called caste system created in the first place. That some people are deserving of some positions because of their birth. So it will never go through reservations. Only your bosses will change. The people who were bossing you earlier, those bosses have changed. So,
AcademicMan, can status not be showered upon by the state artificially by doing reservations? Because since that is the goal, the economics have never been the goal of reservations. Even today, when some right wingers demand that see, he's rich now, why should he get reservations? The idea is that no, the pro reservation people say it themselves that no, it was never about them being poor or rich. It's about the lack of representation, which of course is ignored in West Bengal.
Exactly, but how long will you get the benefit of your ancestor being supposedly not given water 5,000 years ago? I mean, how long can?
No, but my question is the status showering not working?
Status showering works very much. Where do you think Mayawati and Ravan and all of these big Dalit leaders and even in West Bengal, a lot of Dalit leaders have come around. How do you think their lives improved? Some of them.
So if that's working, therefore, shouldn't we wait until it reaches everybody?
It's working for some people, some families. And if a system is working only for some families, then that continues the same logic of what Ambedkar was trying to critique in the first place.
No, then if we just wait long enough.
But we did wait like 80 years. I know you're trying to push me to make a point, but the point
why won't it work in 80 more years? How do you know? Because if it's working, my argument is that it's not what is called working.
To make it quote unquote better, again, that's the whole point, that accountability and government don't really, they're, oxymorons, they don't work. So if you make the government create creamy layers and monitor it with digital monitoring and stuff like that, and see, who got reservation and their son and daughter or grandson, granddaughter should not get reservation. If that logic persists, then maybe it will uplift many more families. But as you know and I know, that in the case of many IAS, IPS officers and many others, that people who are not, who claim to be something are not those, that such cases have come around. And when it comes to protecting their own, these officers are pretty good at protecting themselves from public wrath itself. So even the public keeps insulting, abusing them, they don't care. They just shut you down or whatever. So
Academic
that's the whole,
man, yeah, finish your point.
no, that's it. That's the whole problem
Yeah.
of it.
So there is a big elephant in the room, which is the inevitability of it. But there is a smaller elephant in the room, which we also must address somehow, no matter how difficult it is to put in words, especially as a serious academic, which is um, the social status that's being tried to be showered upon. Can that be really possible unless free markets happen? And especially, what I'm mainly asking is, can it get offset? Isn't the social status that's being even showered upon, isn't that getting offset by the further cleavages that are rising in society because of the discontent with reservations, the unfairness of it all? A random guy today who's maybe from a poor background or from a rich background, he was lucky to be in a family where there was cultural capital, and he was really working hard at it, and he was lucky enough to go to tuitions. Now what is his fault here that he must be punished for it? So then this injustice that's happening with this particular guy, doesn't that offset whatever social equality, if at all it has been showered upon or has been achieved? Isn't that even getting cancelled out?
In a way, see, if you look at it from a long-term perspective, it's, and if I'm to assume, see, that in every society, in human society, from time immemorial, there were privileged groups and there were poor groups, right? Now, having said that, there was never justice per se. Like, you would, maybe in some reading of the Ramayana, you would find some form of,
Are you giving a historical justification of injustice? It was never
I'm saying
achieved in history,
injustice will
therefore.
always exist. It depends on who mobilizes more, who mobilizes tactically. It depends totally on your political ability to mobilize. Now, if again, street power argument, I know, but it's true. Street power, because Dalits have now street power, they can demand benefits from the government. And street power works now. That's the whole point. Like, that's the whole point of all this happening in the 20th century after democracy was introduced. If democracy wasn't there, this wouldn't have happened, because then your numbers won't make sense. But when the policymakers and government realize, bhai, these people have higher numbers than most people, in not always but majorly, then that creates a vote bank. And that's how it happens. That's how Muslims got their own laws and Waqf board and all that. That's how these things were done. So government always, any form of government, any state, was always going to privilege some group or the other. Now, the problem of your argument is that, or anyone's argument is that, we believe that the constitution gives us equal rights. But that constitution was written when, 1950s or something, 1947 to 50, right, by the Constituent Assembly, based on certain abstract principles of justice which were framed in Europe. Now, you have to understand that just like how there are unsaid things. So even in America, technically all human beings were equal, but there were other people who were not considered human beings, who were considered property, slaves. So you needed the civil rights movement and all that stuff to, or the war of their civil wars and stuff, to kind of destroy that aspect, right? So here you've been told that all humans are equal, but the state's basic predicament of the state always will prefer a certain group because the ruling elites want the more numerous people to support them in power. So that's why they will always give some kind of benefit. Pehle, they used to give Brahmins and all benefit because Brahmins bought something to the ruling class. Brahmins and others, not just Brahmins, other castes like Casteism maybe, who brought some kind of benefit to the king. So the king was like, okay, bhai, le ja, land le le. Haan, bej dalo and land le lo, whatever. Now the thing is that after we became a democracy giving everyone above the age of 18 voting rights, now we realize that bhai, it's all about numbers. And that's the issue. That's why this will never go away. But that's the very function of the state. You don't have a stateless society. Now, and libertarian ideas, as you know, are, I mean, people see you as a CIA agent if you talk about liberalization. And
Then what you are saying, and Navavimarsh is saying here is basically the same, right? That justice has never existed and it will never exist. It's a human curse. And so there's no point doing something about it. But then, therefore, let's acknowledge
there's no point. I never said don't do something about it. I said this is how it stands. Now, if you expect equality, you will never get it. Right? So
Yeah,
if you cry, if you cry on Twitter, if you cry in your home that why I got screwed, okay, I worked hard and I still got screwed. If that, and you expect people to sympathize, then it won't work.
So
you
if
have to mobilize as a group. You have to be cockroach Janata Party type group to
if that
pressurize
inequality is inevitable and that inequality has never existed and it will never exist, to rephrase Navavimarsh here, then why bother about that Brahmin guy feeling that injustice? It's happened in the past with somebody, now it's happening with somebody. Let's just get on with it.
No, see that's the whole point of where you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you cry in your home, nothing will happen. Because the Dalits, they to their credit, Dalits, tribals, their leaders were able to mobilize them, and they, had street power, numbers, whatever, and they used that to tell the government that, bhai, if you have to give me something, or else I'll do shit. Especially the Muslims did that much better than us we ever did, right? So the Muslims can do whatever they want because of that, because street power and all that. Now again, you will say, okay, why street power? If not street power, then you have social media, whatever. But the point is that you have to make the people in power feel that your vote, your support is necessary. That's exactly how these groups enumerated themselves better than us.
No, I'm saying if that injustice is inevitable, then why should we be protesting? That injustice with the Brahmins as well, or the general castes.
Whatever, to save your ass.
Okay, so there's nothing other than self-interest here, you are saying. There's no objective right or
Is there
wrong.
any other kind of interest in the world? Like, why are we pretending that self-interest, is a bad thing or a problematic thing? Self-interest is the only interest you should have.
So reservations are not wrong. Reservations are just wrong for some people. Reservations are right for some people.
Exactly. No, reservations are a form of, I won't say injustice ko reverse karna and all that stuff. Reservation is just one group saying a more unified group.
One group achieving status.
Yeah.
Some status, temporary push in status.
You have to read Bourdieu called it social capital. Social capital means networks. So their networks were stronger, so they got it. But this was possible again only in democracy. Before we were a democracy, this wasn't a problem. Right? Your numbers matter. So the same way that American politicians started appeasing Latinos and blacks and these people, was the idea, bhai, number ka game hai. So then you do whatever you can to appease them. Same logic everywhere actually. Whenever there's a democracy.
Hmm. I think then
Uh,
that's kind of settles the debate that there is no debate or
Varun
argument.
asked Varun asked, brother asked a beautiful question. Varun, uh,
Hmm.
Jews don't have numbers. How did they manage to gain power without street power?
Yeah, Brahmins
Jains
can do
don't
that.
have street power.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because
Parsis.
like I said, you have to read Bourdieu. So Bourdieu says there are many types of capital. One is obvious, the most obvious one, economic capital. Okay. One is symbolic capital. One is social capital. One is cultural capital. Right. So what happens is these these different types of capital you can interchange them. So let's say you have social capital, or I'll leave in like 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. So once what happens is that you have social capital, let's say, which means you have good networks, developed networks. You can use that to gain political capital, or yeah, you can get hold on. You can get political capital, and you can use social capital to gain political capital or economic capital, or you can use economic capital to gain the others. You can use that guy's network because you have the money to get it. So if you read Bourdieu, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, then academic man. I think we can hear a mini academic man screaming
Yes.
behind you.
Yes.
Okay, then. Thanks for joining. I'll continue the discussion. See you soon.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Now, academic man has left the building. I will continue on with the discussion. uh, yeah, P. Bharat is saying, let me move this banner away. If that's the case, why not just have 100% reservation? Just say no government job, education jobs for general caste, or is the general caste presence that gives them social capital? Yeah, that is it. Because capital is in relation to somebody else. Capital in itself, like you have money, you have nothing to buy around you. You are in a desert. What does that money amount to you? You would much rather have a glass of water. So, but to reiterate, um, a classic counter argument comes from pro reservation people is that government jobs are just such a small percentage. There are no reservations in private jobs. So why even bother about reservation while ignoring the reservations in schools and colleges, entry into institutions, as well as ignoring the fact that they themselves will 5 minutes later demand for uh, reservation in private sector. So uh, at a time reservation is okay because it's not going on in the private sector. At the same time, we should be having reservation in private sector, which then would then the third step of that argument would be that therefore now reservation is wrong since it's now in the private sector. Holy shit, that's the level of the circular argument. And I have had this argument from the farthest left of commies, the topmost, not topmost at least, senior level BJP leaders and RSS people. Uh, Varun is saying reservation is wrong for everyone. Look at what happened to blacks in USA after. Oh yeah, that argument does that work here? Um, the family destruction thing angle won't really work with reservations. It's just the injustice to general castes. That's what is up. Nothing else. So caste enumeration should be targeted first, which is the real root. Yeah, there should be no legal caste terminology in the first place in the Indian laws. Shoma is saying self-interest. I don't know if it's a female Shoma in a Bengali sense, Bengali name, or a guy who's talking about Soma, Shiva, Somaras. Self-interest can't be core thing. Core idea have to be based on meritocracy, fairness, justice, etc. If it's only self-interest, then it's war of all against all. US FDI policy in government and private sector. Yeah, I'm more inclined to think this way because uh, yes, there is in the end no inequality and no justice and stuff, but I am looking for some objective morality because, like the great Amartya Sen, the argumentative Indian, has said, which is sort of the biggest self goal he has made for his other arguments, is that people have multiple identities, Bahumatrik Porichiti, multidimensional identity. So, at a time, I'm a man, I'm a guy, I'm a human, I'm a Bengali, I'm an Indian, I'm a musician, I'm a YouTuber, etc. So, uh, and he says it's okay for anybody to prioritize any given angle in that identity at any given moment based on the circumstances. Sthan kal patro. So in that situation, I'm not just GC. I'm also an Indian whose country is getting very much affected because of the opposite of meritocracy being encouraged. That's where it bothers me most. Like I said today in my okay, a lot of new viewers we have. So let me just give my background in this topic personally, because I was saying that reservation doesn't bother me personally. I'm not in academia, and by the way things are going, I'm Shaha, so I'll probably be eligible for OBC quotas in the future. So it's not like my children won't have reservations. That's why I'm really bothered. Um, where I'm coming from here into this argument is mainly from the nation angle, okay? That it's really bad for the country if incompetent people get to any place of eminence where incompetence cannot be tolerated at all, where it has second order, third order consequences which are disastrous for everything in the country, okay? So yeah, I wrote today 6 hours back in a community post that StreamYard has technical glitch. What kind of glitch, Vimarsh? Okay. Some of my viewers have been asking me if I'll join the reservation Hatao Andolan. Frankly, I don't know what quote-unquote joining entails. It's impossible to know for sure, but my hunch is that I'm the first YouTuber in India to openly criticize reservations and call for its end since around mid-2022 or late 2022. I do that every other day in my live streams and in collaboration with our anonymous guest, AcademicMan, who is an exceptional sociology scholar from a highly esteemed university. We have formulated a critical explanation of caste, which can be the biggest argument against reservations, and one which pisses off both casteist trads and commies. I have a playlist on my channel called Caste Papers, which are long-form live streams discussing genuine, legit papers from established journals on caste by legit scholars. The playlist has 27 live streams, so about 26 papers have been, not about, exactly 26 papers have been discussed in full and in detail. One I discussed twice. I know I had two advantages behind this so-called courage. I'm not upper caste myself, therefore it's easier for me to say these things, and I had about 500 subscribers when I started saying that. So I had less to lose. But now I have 17.6k subscribers, and I have not budged on this issue, and I have more planned. So I'll keep doing my thing, what I think is right. But if I have to join or organize with other people, then I want my personal demand from the government of India to also be taken up. I know it may sound audacious to demand things with less than 18,000 YouTube subscribers, but I'm not bothered about reservations on a personal level. It doesn't affect me. Maybe so the way things are progressing, my kids will probably be eligible for OBC reservations in the future. Not that I don't already have the means to get a fake caste certificate. I just think reservations are a moral crime that's harming the country every moment. It's a moral crime because it's harming the country every moment. My personal passion project is fixing India's retarded animal cruelty laws and seeing Vijay Goyal kicked out of the BJP. If anybody's with me on this, I'm with their nationalist pet projects. Screen flickering. Okay, let me see some comments now. A reservation makes them lazy, mediocre. That argument works. You are incentivizing them to work less. Yes. And the problem is that you are incentivizing those kids to work even harder to get into these institutions who already have insane amounts of cultural capital and social capital and often economic capital. You are asking those kids to study harder, become more knowledgeable, become more able at what you do, which will lead to success more in the society. No mother of reservation can stop those kids who are studying twice as hard just to get into those institutions. It's impossible. No force of universe can stop that. So if you want more Brahmin dominance, have more reservation. In another way, civilization itself is imposing of order over the chaos of nature, and it's an eternal struggle. Everything from science and technology to convenience to not having pandemic, everything we have is owed to this. It's not like an individual can live well in a chaotic world. So self-interest all the way circles back to upholding. I guess, yeah, if you think long enough about it, off the top of your head, no. But yeah, if you are inclined to think in that critical fashion, yes, that is, I guess, the bigger truth. It's because of the private sector that India is still thriving, as there is merit. Otherwise, look at government institutions and bureaucracy. But rising spirit 007. The private sector, doesn't it make you work like slaves? The government sector doesn't make you do that. Are you endorsing slave-like work culture? There is no reservation in private sector is also an argument. The access farmer keeps on. You picked up on that term. Oh no, shit. Reservation मेरे tax का ROI घटा रहा है. Prove me wrong. Absolutely. Vijay Goel, yeah, go to Twitter. Just Revel's argument. Would you be okay with, say, high pass cutoff, say 70%, but still have reservation? So everyone eligible to apply will need to have minimum 70%. Competency won't be a problem. No, competency will still be a problem. It will just be less of a problem, because then only the 71% guy will be preferred over the usual 98-99% guy. Okay, my AC is malfunctioning. It became too cold. That's why I'm shivering a little. Holy shit. Native Boiragato shit. Your DP is insane. Do you think the reservation Hatao Andolan will gain critical mass? How do you deal with the counter protesters? The counter protesters are not coming on the streets, right? Unless it becomes a full-on clash between Bhim Army and urban anti-reservation kids, then we are then they are very fucked. Will it gain critical mass? I'm not seeing the signs so far. I'm not feeling that in the algorithm so far. It will definitely achieve at least one thing. It will create a rift in the CJP circles, that circle, because in that anti-BJP circle also there are, these days at least, especially because BJP has done so much reservations, there is a huge section which is very much anti-reservation, and of course, and therefore gets to use that as an excuse to be, since see their goal is to be anti-BJP, so this kind of helps them and gives them sort of a peace in their hearts that, yeah, I got another excuse to be against BJP. Yes, I'm against very much reservations as well, even though my everybody I like in politics has advocated for that forever. Every academic I like, etc. In this case, I being that guy, that person, hypothetical person. Okay, yeah, a lot of retards watch my channel these days. I have to be more explanatory. So, yeah, it will create a rift in that circle. So therefore, critical mass might be achieved after that happens. After they have those debates, then they have a fallout. Then those guys come on the pro anti-reservation side. After that, it's going to happen. CJP funded tha ki nahi, pata nahi, but reservation Hatao Andolan being propped as a counter to CJP makes more sense. It's not being propped so far. BJP is not going to prop this. They will rather say, prop this. What's the strongest counter argument to the representation argument for SC/ST reservations? Injustice to first and foremost, injustice to kids who are working harder, or if not working harder, are better at something, know some things more. And the second point is the second order, third order consequences of the very first argument. Okay, that if those kids who are more qualified are prevented from getting into the best institutions, they are going to be, India is going to be deprived of the top talent in top institutions, then further in top professions, which is going to breed incompetence in every profession. Mysteriously enough, that sounds like a fact, right? Correlation doesn't always have to be causation, but at least we have a correlation here. Everyone seems to be incompetent at what they do, because either they are at their job because they got into some qualification, that was not for them, or they had to go there because they were not getting into some other stuff that they wanted to or would have been great at, but they simply could not get in because of reservations. So that kind of support in for the reservation Hatao Andolan, or let's say arguments for against SC/ST are pretty much it. I'm thinking if there are more. There are lots more smaller ones, but major one is this: the injustice. Now, see, there are some who argue that those institutions aren't great by themselves. They are best because they take the top talent, and that top talent would do well anywhere else. That's not completely wrong. So let's say a guy who cannot get into IIT Madras has to get into IIT Kharagpur. How much of his potential is getting diminished here? Is there a way to quantify this? Is there a way to quantify what social evils happen today? Only representation, right? That's the metric pretty much people use. Then by that metric, West Bengal is the most caste society because let's say only now Goyals and Kumars and Agarwals have been getting into top positions in the police, in the West Bengal police and IPS services, but some bureaucrats, some top IAS, WBCS officers as well. But up until like 10 years, 20 years or 30 years back, or even all in all of the other professions right now, it's pretty much been Brahmins, Vaidyas, Kaistas. There hasn't been representation of any other caste pretty much in all spaces, and especially in Bengali dominated spaces. Then if that is the metric for existing social inequalities, why isn't anybody talking about West Bengal? And can we solve that by therefore reservation in Tollywood? Because that place is filled with Brahmins, Vaidyas, Kaistas. So if we can't quantify that, and if we can't quantify exactly, let's say, which which upper castes would be as let's say would be as full of potential in some other institution, we can only make educated guesses or listen to personal testimonies, right? A guy who could not get into IIT Madras, if he says, no, I was better off at IIT Madras, IIT Kharagpur was not enough for my knowledge, that is a crime against humanity, your nation, your society, your fellow citizens, everybody. In so many ways, because of the things he could have done, discovered, etc., made for the country, served the country with more knowledge, etc., and simply because one random Indian citizen worked hard for it, and he was told, "Fuck off." That is discrimination, and some discrimination will always go on, but this particular discrimination is harming the country in 3-4 other ways as well. Dada, did you see Rajesh Nandi on Chopra Test? Yeah, and I commented on it. I have a live stream on which the thumbnail also says that I'll give my opinions on that Rajesh Nandi video. Need one bureaucrat Hatao Andolan while we are. To be honest, Delhi police will use lathis, tear gas, pellets, guns, even AKs from day one if reservation Hatao Andolan happens on ground. BJP sucks on commies and peas on it. So now a lot of those AK-47 users will be beneficiaries of reservation themselves. What are you going to do then? The pernicious evil, becoming Ambedkarite towards reservation beneficiaries in a way. The pernicious evil in reservation is always from individuals, talent, and systems losing our. But it always framed. But it goes beyond that. I know civilization that keeps removing its own elite survives. Yeah. Okay. Then it's probably worth bringing strategically people on again as well to let them realize value. Oh yeah, I do think it's worth combining simply because your topic gets a larger endorsement and you can say it's something you. Yeah, for those reasons it works. Also, nobody's asking about the accident of birth debate. I mean, someone is born into a poor family who said that it's not his punishment and it should not become punishment for somebody else as well. Reservation Hatao Andolan is demanding reduction of reservations and limiting it to 4 criterion. criteria, but I want absolutely zero reservation, but nothing is going to happen anyway. Oh my god, that's 3 degrees of inner turbulence here to learn. Wow. But yeah, zero reservation is the goal. DI policy not destroyed black families. It's most welfare for single mothers also. Yeah, I didn't say DI screwed black families. We said the Great Society program screwed black families. The Great Society program is not DI. You don't need SCST Act to reduce atrocity against Dalits. You need gun rights. That's kind of one argument I was thinking of. The argument that casteism is going on in certain spaces, in certain professions, among certain people. Therefore, let's have reservation, which is also a sort of a caste-based discrimination and family-based discrimination. That is like saying, let us everybody become murderers because murderers exist. Let us be terrorists because terrorists exist. Meanwhile, saying these people are the ones saying that we cannot have gun rights because everybody will turn into school shooters, or therefore school shooters exist, so why can't we be school shooters, etc. But one injustice is being done against somebody, therefore let's do another injustice against somebody based on their group identity. And that is supposed to be a liberal view. Liberalism and group identity, guys. Punish somebody because he is rich today and has a Brahmin surname. Even if he's poor today, his ancestors might have prevented somebody from drinking water, or might have prevented them from going to a temple, entering into a temple. Let's have that surname decide this grandson's existence today. First of all, incentivize for him to work harder, study harder, and also make his life hell, and also prevent him from getting into the institutions of his choice, and also possibly screw his potential of serving the country by doing the best job he could in whatever profession he got into later in his life. But we can't have jizya reparations. If reservations' only goal was elimination of caste system and the commies believe Bengal is such a casteless society, why not start with removing reservation in Bengal? Yes, a UNO card, if you will, native Boiragato. Yes, exactly. If representation or lack of representation, if lack of representation is a representation of the existence of casteism, then have more reservation in West Bengal, especially West Bengal and in Tollywood, etc. Or if reservations, if lack of representation is not in fact a representation of casteism, then let's admit that West Bengal in fact has solved casteism, because the most obvious casteism based incidents do not happen in fact in Bengal, and therefore let's not have reservations in West Bengal. Why have reservations in West Bengal? Because it's happening in Bihar or UP allegedly, and Haryana more so. I think one biggest angle that we keep ignoring out of the goodness of our hearts, us urban folk, is that we are going on paying for the fucking sins of the rural parts of India. When is that going to stop? If we are going to talk about group identities, bro, you have another group coming. You are not going to be an Indian. You are sometimes going to be Kannadiga, sometimes going to be Bengali, sometimes going to be Hindu, sometimes going to be Muslim, sometimes going to be Brahmin, sometimes going to be Dalit. How about you be just your urban self for once and look at how the state is fucking you? And especially if you are a general category urban guy. But mostly you are taking the blame for some in fact possible harm being done by a general category guy in some village, and you are the one paying for it. So it's not like every general category male is completely blameless of casteism all across the country. No, what you are basically paying for is for a Dehati's actions. Check out the anti-men laws in marriage today, or divorce, or rape and molestation accusations. You are paying for the crimes happening in villages. The problem there is the police more often than not won't register an FIR if the caste of the husband gets involved and stuff, or simply political connections, gunda connections. That's happening in the villages, and the laws are being made stricter and stricter and stricter, and more prone to misuse against men. But that problem is not going away in the villages. the misuse is going on, in fact, in the urban spaces. It's in the end probably just an urban-rural divide, and if in fact you want to have concessions in your reservation Hatao movement, just say yes, reservations will go on in those districts where incidents of casteism happen. Fuck that. Kolkata's Bengalis at least should not be facing reservations for that stuff. If representation is not an issue. If representation is an issue, start with Tollywood. How would restricting reserved categories from applying in general category affect the system? Wouldn't it force merit-based selection in reserved categories too? Wait. How would restricting reserved categories from applying in general categories? Well, what's the situation with this? Are Dalits restricted from applying in general category? I think there have been some hearings on this, right? Supreme Court or High Court? I don't remember. But anyway. But that merit is coming from an already less meritorious crowd. That's why. To create institutions, the Christians, Muslims being able to show political power, institutions, and science Christians specifically. Have you explored the subculture? We'll try to forward it. Wait, what's Ludwig talking about? I had handwritten an article in 2011 which explores the Phuleite Ambedkarite hatred of upper caste. I failed to protect nation and invent science, unable to apply traditional knowledge to create institutions. Oh, I see. Interesting. ICM doesn't end caste because caste is a legal identity. What is ICM, intercaste marriage? General caste father and destiny mother is equal to general caste children and vice versa and so on. It doesn't end caste names, but it ends casteism. South Indian, because it happens in the first place because of two anti-caste people or non-casteist people. South Indian commies at least let go of their surnames to support their caste. We can don't do that. Dada, in which live stream have you commented on Rajesh Nandi's video? In some two or three live streams back, not more than that. Intermarriage argument worldview itself assumes the traditional caste as a legit identity unit parameter to measure the casteism in society, therefore it ossifies the same. Yeah, Ashkacham. The confusion with that is that Savarkar called for it, so we are calling for it. It was right for Savarkar's time. It doesn't make any grammatical sense in today's time. It does make sense for Savarkar's time because women had no say in their marriages. This is the argument I give to folks who complain about collapsing urban infrastructure and at the same time say stuff like, but freebies are necessary. Why categories in the first place? Freebies help win elections, plus you also don't want delimitation basis population. Are bhai, comment gulo chole galo. Wait. StreamYard is so funny. Population share. So keep complaining about crumbling urban infrastructure. Intermarriage argument worldview itself assumes. Oh yeah. This we just did. No, it's not urban-rural divide. The diagnosis is wrong. Women victims are ignored, don't get justice because of structural problems in your system, not because of supposed anti-women bias. What are the structural problems in a system to prevent an urban woman from registering a legitimate case of molestation against her accuser? Unless it's a completely devastated society like Trinamool's Kolkata. District-wise reservations. Yes, district-wise difference in degree of reservation, in number of seats and percentages, based on the proportional crimes against Dalits. So that would, since it's so decentralized and so localized, therefore there will be an incentive amongst the general castes to actively go around. This sentence is based on the premise that only general castes do casteism against Dalits, which is false. But even based on that premise, it will incentivize. It applies to anybody who does casteism. Therefore, the general castes themselves will be incentivized to actively go around preventing or demeaning and looking down upon anybody who does casteism, and therefore, in that way, preventing casteism further. But coming to the reality of it, which is that OBCs do a lot of the casteism. Upper rung hierarchy based castes inside the Dalit groups, they also do similar discrimination against people lower than them. But when it is district based, and let's say it's a completely Dalit majority district, and there is in fact reports of casteism from a Mahar to somebody lower than them, that district will have only Mahars as the general category, and only people lower than them will get the reservations, that kind of a thing. And to do that, hire some bureaucrats. Who gives a shit? You are going to do socialism anyway, but at least do socialism to encourage competence and merit for the country. Merit is good, competence is good. There is Ash. Where is Ash? No one will admit it too. I thought there is some ash on my beard, holy shit, because I was smoking. Fuck delimitation, government should just use Article 3 and create 100 small states. 75. Just need simple majority. Majority. Can we admit that there is a class problem in gynocentric law? Oh my god. Yeah. Yes. I know it's wild that intersectional feminists do not talk about it. Yes. জোর থাকবে কিভাবে মনুস্মৃতিতে হিন্দুদের নিচু জাতি বলে ডিসক্রিমিনেট করা হয়? তাই নাকি? কারোর কাছে কিছু ডিসক্রিমিনেশনের ল হয় না কোথাও? সবার সব জায়গায় ঢোকার জীবনযাপনের রাইট আছে, তোমার নীল লাল বাতি গাড়ির রাইট নেই কেন? Gautam Dixit Raju splits must apply, no one wants that. Yes, that's the one I'm in favor of. STs and Catholic NGOs are coming to Delhi from Jharkhand to protest against FCRA and delimitation. They too will come. Let's see what they are able to achieve. Is it realistically possible to remove reservation from our country when no political parties will support the yours reserved students in apply in general categories, and if they get higher numbers, they do not apply for the reservations. But if they do not get the numbers, they go for the reservations, which is unfair. Yeah, it is unfair. Yes, it is realistically possible to remove reservation if enough people demand and create halla over it. Halla baloo. Reserved students apply in general categories, and if they understood. Interesting thing, DI led to more than 55% women and man as minority in some sectors that lead to toxic feminization, and they are saying it created serious issue in judiciary, which is highly logical field. I see, but there are no studies to prove these things. These are just claims, so these don't work in a parliamentary setting where you are going to have serious debates. These are good for anonymous account live chats. What I'm saying is the reason why women don't get justice is not because of anti-women bias, political connections, corrupt officers will let go murder dacoits, not women. Yeah. Fair enough. Varun, there is that one angle which will also be mostly prevalent in villages, that do some settlement, कोर्ट कचहरी का मामला हो जाएगा, बहुत साल केस चलेगा, एम्बैरेसमेंट हो जाएगा, सबको पता चल जाएगा कि तुम ग्रेप्ड महिला हो या मोलेस्टेड महिला हो, शादी कर लो इससे. That is genuine systemic bias against women in terms of taking FIRs, but that also happens in mainly cities, mainly villages. So why the fuck should city folk pay the price for that? Reservation is anti-capitalist and against free market. No one gives a shit. People hate capitalism anyway and hate free markets. There's pro-women bias in legal system, not anti-women. Yeah, in terms of legality, yes. But in terms of the system, i.e. the people comprising the system, there's a problem in villages. In the context of my last comment, how would restricting reserved categories from applying in general category affect the system? Wouldn't it? Yeah, understood. What I'm saying, yeah. Okay, then that was a fruitful discussion. I think we will have more reservation discussions if, especially, people present further counter arguments. I think that's enough for today. Thanks, guys. See you all soon. Bye bye. Thanks for joining. Good night.
কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো কালো তোকে। কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো বিপদে মা তোকে ডাকে সবাই, আমি যেন তোকে রাখি ভালো। বিপদে মা তোকে ডাকে সবাই, আমি যেন তোকে রাখি ভালো। কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো। রূপে মা তুই জগৎ জননী, ভুবন মোহিনী বেশ মা তোর। রূপে মা তুই জগৎ জননী, ভুবন মোহিনী বেশ মা তোর। আধারে খুঁজেছে জ্ঞানহীনে, আধারে খুঁজেছে জ্ঞানহীনে, হৃদয়ে খোঁজেনি আলো মা তোর। আলো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো কালো তোকে বলে সবাই, আমি দেখি আলো বিপদে মা তোকে ডাকে সবাই, আমি যেন তোকে রাখি ভালো।